Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Hey, Mark, nice to see you. And hi, everyone. Thanks for listening in.
Yeah, hey Zena, nice to see you again. And not sure if anybody's noticed, but we are starting to play with the format a little bit here, where we're recording more topical stuff, just banter at the top of the show. And yeah, so this is our third week giving this a shot. And also, you may have noticed that our recordings are pre-recorded and edited and so on, so that they were done like weeks ago. So we are
Mhm.
trying to get that timing. But yeah, this is just something fun where we're just talking about what's on our mind or what we're hearing in the industry because we're both have our ear pretty deep in what's going on and
Yeah.
around. And yeah, I don't know. What are you hearing these days? Like, what are the rumblings?
Rumblings. Well, I mean, for me personally, and for my team at GreenSpark Group, like, well, we've been working a lot over the last little while on expanding to Australia. So that's a
Yeah, you're
fun
going to
thought.
Australia next week?
Yeah, next week. Next week. So it's
Nice.
been really cool. We've reached out to a lot of folks. We've had a lot of help there. Shout out to some folks in Australia. You know who you are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because it's been such a great I don't know, collective effort, honestly. People have asked us to go there and work and so we're putting a lot of focus into it. And so that's been on my mind a lot. It kind of dovetails with what we said last week in terms of reinvention and expansion and these sorts of
Hmm.
ideas, right? But now like the rubber's hitting the road because I'm going there next week.
Right.
So,
But I mean, is it a growing film and production hub?
hmm yeah, yeah, I would say, it's interesting. It kind of feeds into some of the talk about like topical type issues going on. It feeds into a few headlines and articles I've read recently
Hmm.
where it is folks are analyzing, the entertainment industry, analyzing what's going on in LA,
Yeah.
analyzing, various aspects of the workforce and
Yeah, the
whatnot.
creative industry.
Yeah, the creative industries. And one of the data points is sort of this exodus of film and TV
Hmm.
production to other parts of the world. And so,
Yeah.
that's pulling us to other parts of the world, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we even spoke with the group from Hungary, right?
Hmm.
There's tons of production going on in Hungary and Eastern
Hmm.
Europe. Even the UK now is perking up.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's just tons of studios being built all over the US as well, right? I mean, Austin, Texas, and
Oh,
Las
yeah.
Vegas, but all at the cost of productions in LA,
Yeah,
right?
something's going on there, right? Like it's I think shooting days are down,
Hmm.
production just jobs are down from previous years and, people are hurting there,
Yeah,
So something's
yeah.
going
But
on.
it's
There's a
interesting though
rumbling.
because but film folks have always gone to where the work is, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's so in some ways it's I think it's a temporary blip. Honestly, I think LA is at a cusp of reinvention. Unfortunately, obviously the wildfires were a big thing, but it's kind of like what's that tipping point
Mhm.
where the industry reinvents itself. And you and I both read the Ted Joya article recently as well, which was got our brains moving in this direction. And so it's really around a lot of the studios are cutting costs now, are raising their prices, are not necessarily investing in new creative projects, so to speak. So there's something in that realm as well where there needs to be a taking back of this of the creative process and that trickle down. has to go down to the creatives that are creating this content.
Hmm.
So that's going to be a sort of a big topic of discussion here. It's not just AI, right? It's a perfect storm.
Oh, totally. There are a lot of factors at play, I think. And, even on the audience side, their attention is going in different directions. They're watching more sports, they're gaming, streaming, they're on
Hmm.
YouTube, they're, doing, Substack, they're like,
Yeah.
watching TV, like all of these things. So I think folks are paying attention to that and trying to figure out how to best fit into that and, investing in certain aspects of that. Like sports is a big thing. Studios are starting to pay attention to and invest more
Yeah.
in. And that's interesting, right? What does that mean? What does that mean for, the creatives out there? What does it mean for entertainment broadly? That all of this content is showing up on different platforms. So it's it's definitely in flux.
Well, it means that Quentin Tarantino is now writing theater, plays
Yeah, I
plays
saw
for
that in that
theater,
article.
right? So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time, but also from this comes these new ways of doing things, indie studios and indie productions, creatives that are in charge of their own content,
Mm-hmm.
can get it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Great stories always float to the top.
Great stories and this opportunity for reinvention. Like, for LA specifically, they've got big events coming to town in
Hmm.
sports world with FIFA and the World Cup and then LA 28. I mean, things are moving in that space a lot. And so there's going to be, I think, spillover into film and TV, spillover
Yeah,
into other
yeah.
creative aspects of the industry there. And this opportunity for reinvention because, it if you're focused in one kind of area of the ecosystem, yeah, you're going to feel, a certain way. Maybe you feel like, things are, going down or jobs are moving away or whatnot. But then on the other parts of the ecosystem, there's a lot going on. And so I
Hmm.
think this is all going to start to come together and we're going to start reimagining how we share equipment, for example,
Yes.
how we're producing, various aspects of this sporting um, content, all of it's gonna start to flow in different ways, I think.
Yeah, and even the backbone behind the scenes. I mean, think about how much power is needed for these things. Just as like top of mind, right? It's like they're going to need clean power solutions. They're going to need different things
Hmm.
going on. They're not going to do the Olympics. They're going to try to do them without as many big old greasy generators.
Hmm.
So, those are opportunities too all around. And so these new production methods that have been essentially being pioneered over the last decade that we talk about here
Hmm.
are going to be put into action in these large global events.
Hmm.
So I think that that's going to be an exciting place as well. But also, I mean, LA is just such a hub,
I mean,
and
yeah,
it's
it's
like
not
LA,
going
New York,
away.
right? So that it's not going anywhere.
No, no, it's not going anywhere. It's just, how do we reinvent? How does the
Yeah.
industry want to show up, right? So,
Well, and we've talked about it as well in this podcast. It's that why not make California just say, look, we are the greenest film hub. We are doing this, right? Putting it on the map again as the leader in technology, as a leader in filmmaking, in telling stories with, net positive
hmm.
effect on the surrounding area and the economy and so on, right? So
Hmm.
it's as even Robert Leroy says, right? It's doesn't cost more to do it. That's what we hear all the time, right? If you're doing it right with new technology.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot at play, a lot at play. Folks, folks have a great opportunity to lean in on this. So watch
Yeah,
this space.
yeah, it's going to be changing and evolving,
Yeah,
and we'll be talking
totally.
about it.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it. Definitely. I mean, we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse. And if you're out there hearing, different things or you've got an opinion on this, um, definitely write in. You can write in through our website or Instagram. That's a great way too.
Hmm.
You know, get in touch, let us know because you guys are the eyes and ears out there. We're trying as much as we can with our teams and whatnot, but you guys are out there all over the place. So tell us what you're thinking.
Totally. And we're hoping to get a call-in number
I know we're
Sooner
working
sooner
on
than
that. That has
later.
just like gone down on the priority
Yeah,
list.
yeah.
We really
But
need to do that.
yeah, because we want to hear your voices. Hey, everybody. Today we're speaking with Joe Madziak, a talented construction manager based in Toronto, and he's been a pioneer in optimizing and reusing sets and building materials. He's an advocate for circularity and somehow has managed to cut through the noise and the fluff and excuses, showing a real path forward for the industry. He's saving money, saving materials from going to landfill, and being innovative in how he approaches construction. And we're looking forward to talking to him today.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, Zena.
Welcome to the tie-in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Just before I hit record, I introduced you to Mark, but I know you guys haven't met until now, so kind of
Yeah.
fun to be connecting some dots here because Mark's been working in the industry a long time too, on the energy side. So,
Yeah, pleasure, Joe.
um,
I've heard your name lots,
Oh,
but nice to meet you.
yeah. Likewise. Likewise.
all right. So I know you and I, Joe, have been, swirling in, the industry for a little while and on panels and in conversations and inside groups and all sorts of things. So I've always been um, admiring your work and your approach to construction. So I'm super excited to finally get to talk to you about this. So I just for, context and you are a construction manager and you're based in Toronto. Is that
That's correct. Yes.
all right? Okay. And so how long have you been working in the film and TV industry? When did you get started?
Uh, I started out in theater,
Okay.
and so I came to Toronto in the 80s,
Okay.
and I was working with a guy in theater that said, "Oh, would you like to do work on film and TV at the same time?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." And literally within a week after that, I was on David Cronenberg's Dead Zone. Like that's how easy it was back then
Yeah.
because it was the film business had just sort of arrived to the city, and and that was the benefit of it. The downside was there often wasn't enough work to take you through the year, so we all had little side jobs and to stick it out, we do maybe one or two projects a year, and then we'd build decks or renovate houses and stuff like that. But literally, I'm sure it was probably only about 2 or 3 weeks after this guy asked me, and I was working on Dead Zone.
Oh, wow. That's kind of that's amazing. It's
And do I have
so
time? Do I have time to tell you a quick story what totally
uh,
endeared me to the film business?
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I want to know.
So we're shooting at Niagara on the lake in a gazebo. There's a little park in Niagara on the lake. The gazebo's still there. They actually, the city came back and said, if you build this to code, we'd like to keep the gazebo. So they poured the foundations for us, and we actually built the gazebo. Now I can't remember if it was spring or fall, but it was where the weather was a bit dicey. So they'd shot a whole day, and I was doing standby with this. There was a few of us doing standbys because part of the gazebo came apart if they needed it. So uh, I can't remember, like I say, if it was spring or fall, but the first day of shooting was fine. Weather was great, but it snowed overnight, and they had to do these pickup shots. And so I can still remember, David Cronenberg, producers, and everybody in a little huddle, and we were standing around listening. And finally, I just heard someone say, "Well, we get rid of the snow." And literally, the fire department helped, and we bought every broom and squeegee in Niagara on the lake. And between the hoses of the fire department, we cleared a park full of snow. And I thought, man, what a business! Like like I thought, I love it. That sort of endeared me to it. That just the challenge of that, and like, no, we'll get rid of it.
You can do anything in film. Like we can make anything happen,
Christmas in
right?
Yeah,
July. Christmas in
yes,
July.
it's right. It's right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So how's the industry changed then? Yeah, how have you seen like, the construction department or working with crew in various ways? Like how do you think it's evolved over the years?
Well, I think when I first started, It was interesting. There's been a few changes. I think designers had a lot more power back then. I think the
Mm,
industry was more director, designer driven. And now, every show's got a showrunner. And I think, I think the designer is help steered into certain ways on most shows.
mm,
So I think there's that. But I think it's just gotten more with CNC machines. Like before, if there was curves or like really odd little shapes, we
mhm,
could do them, but you just have to explain to them, this is going to take a little while and this is going to be expensive. But now with CNC machines, and they can just send the file to someone and overnight they can cut the shapes and you put it together. So shows like Star Trek and that are much, much easier to do
mhm,
than they would have been back then.
mhm.
Um, I feel the big
Mhm.
change in the
Yeah.
safety. We used to like, when I think back of some of the stuff we got away with in our sort of younger days, like send someone up a building to put a sign or rig down, and without asking if their qualifications or ask, those sort of things. So that's changed big time for the better, I may add.
Mhm.
Um, and I think more and more we're also seeing more responsibility around the environment, which is huge. I think
Yeah.
we got a long way to go, but at least we're now seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just curious on that. When did this idea of sustainability um, or efficiency or however you thought about it, when did this start coming up for you?
For me, I was working on I did the last I think 5 seasons of Suits.
Okay.
Four or five anyway. I did the last four or five of Suits, and working for NBC. That was the first time I'd come across a sustainability officer.
Mm-hmm.
And working with her, we made a lot of headway in terms of trying whenever possible ordering FSC lumber.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I found a plywood for skinning our flats called Revolution Ply that
Mm-hmm.
was totally sustainable. Um, and we were very good at keeping like our organics and recycling. In fact, we won the NBC Green Award the
Oh,
one year.
okay.
Our department, construction,
Okay.
we won the NBC Green Award. But then I got thinking, we're doing all of this, but it's still like small potatoes compared. I'm still throwing way too much in the landfill.
Yeah.
Like, I
Mhm.
realize that, yeah, I'm doing these things and it's all great. And I don't want to disparage that. We can't stop that. But it's just on the bigger picture, I was still throwing way too much in the landfill,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I started trying to talk to people and to be fair, I'm doing more talking than action in a way because
Mhm.
it's not just up to me. I need more people on board, like the production and that sort of thing, other designers,
Mm-hmm.
and but still, I think that's where it started to hit me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the process starts at the design level, right? Can you maybe talk us through just that process so we understand when someone comes to you and say, "Hey, look, I need this, this room or this sort of structure." Um, what does that process look like, just for some of us who aren't really familiar with that construction side?
Right. Well, if there are designers, especially so most of my work is series work. So in a way, we try a lot of people would try to be thinking of how can I reuse this down the line to begin with. I think a lot of or most coordinators, if not a lot of coordinators, would already be thinking, can I at least reuse this down the line for something? Because you're throwing a lot of money in it, and maybe this can work for another set. And then there's designers who are already thinking that I want to build this apartment and we're going to use it 5 different times for the next few shows, right? So that's a huge help when you've got a designer already booked. And that's what I say. So much of it comes on the design portion. Um, but I think the next level of that is, and I may say Clive Thomason that I worked with on Suits, we would go that extra step and almost build modularity, build with modules, thinking that in mind that I can take that out of here and add another wall here and totally change the look of this office.
Mhm.
Now, we had the added advantage, I may say, on suits that we knew it was going to be offices. It was going to be
Hmm.
lawyer. It was going to be either lawyer's office or the visiting lawyer's office, or they're going to see, a judge. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we had that advantage. Um, but we got to the state by that final season where we had all these nooks and crannies. We were up at the Downsview building, which is a lot of space, and we had quite a few studios. So in every studio, we had little spaces that we could safely store stuff, and we had some lockups. And so literally from joining Clive in the art department and walking up to my office, we could almost design the set because we'd stop in and Clive would say, I want to use these windows. Let's use these windows here. We'll pull those other and let's use these flats and we'll cover them with a fabric or we'll do something different. Let's do this. And so, it became I can make a business case that it became very cost efficient as well,
Hmm.
but it
Mhm.
was huge. We held on to pieces for a couple seasons, you know.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously there's still the odd little build for each set, like if, nothing ever works out perfectly. But so those are the three levels, I think in terms of from the start, starting to design, knowing that you want to do this in a modular fashion, to just at least being aware that you want to reuse it. And I give an example on that. I just did a series last year, Accused, and each I think there was 10 episodes. Yeah, 10 episodes. And each one was an entirely different story. Like there was no follow through, no characters from each week.
Mhm.
Each one was a whole new episode, a whole new story. And we serviced those. Man, we had like a precinct because it was always involved law, you know what I mean? So there's often cops or someone visiting a cop station for information or whatever. So we had different precincts. We had literally had one precinct, but we turned that into about five or six different looking ones, right? We had two apartments, one more rundown, one more high-end conduit, and we just reused those, so I think it's out there and more people, and it's quite possible that the reusing starting to happen. I
Hmm.
just feel the next level, and Zena and you and I have been talking about this, is when that show ends, I'm still throwing a lot of that out unless there's another show right there at the time willing to take it.
Right.
And so that gap in between, Zena and a bunch of us are trying to work on finding a space that we could store stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and and not just for us, like put it there and anybody could take it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious just to really dive into this idea of modularity because it sounds like that's been you know, a key way for you to save materials and money in this process. So can you help us think through how you approach doing a set in a modular way? Are you numbering walls? Are you like, is it by, like, how does that work?
Okay, well, first let me, when I first started in this business, it was run kind of by what we call the studio system. Because
Mhm.
when you go down to LA, they have all this warehouse of all these flat pieces and windows and doors that are all reusable.
Mhm.
At least they used to, and I'm not sure what that's like now. But when we first started out, that's literally what we did. And CBC, you've heard Marion talk about this.
Yeah.
CBC for years had a huge warehouse, and when you got a set, designer would design what they really wanted it to look like, ideally, and then you'd go down and you'd pick. Oh, I can use these windows. I'd use those doors, and then I can use some stock flattage. And then
Mhm.
when you were done with that set, all that would get returned to CBC.
Right.
So that in itself is kind of modularity. So I think what scares people off is having to think that, oh, I got to like build and square like a Lego. I think when I say modularity, I think some people are
Mm.
thinking like a Lego system. And I
Yeah.
don't think it has to be that strict. I would argue that our suits one almost was Lego because we got so good at because a lot of those offices were the windows anyway, so we'd reuse the big aluminum style windows,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
so in between that, then you'd have a bit of wall, maybe a bit of wall, then more window, and so ours became actually quite modular, but it doesn't have to be that. I think that you can still when think modularity, just thinking of reusing set pieces, window pieces, you know, door pieces, flattage, right? That
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and and that's just and oh my God, there was flats there for years at CBC, like when we used to go there, or when I did a show called Friday the 13th or Friday's Curse. Um, we could use it flats 9, 10 times before. And
Mm-hmm.
then if they got too thick with plaster, you save them for when you're looking for brick, and then you still use it as a structure and you're putting brick in front of it. So it doesn't matter if it's a smooth flat.
Right.
And
Right.
somehow we just got away from that. I think our space kept getting smaller. Obviously, the cost of real estate, and I
Mhm.
think our spaces just kept getting smaller. And I don't know, maybe the new designers coming in didn't want to do that at first, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somewhere in there there was a shift. There was a shift. And it's interesting, and I think you mentioned it with Clive, where, you know, he was saying, oh, we can do this, we can use this material, we can put, fabric over this flat or whatever the case was. It's interesting, this concept of designing and then assessing what you already have and building from that, as opposed to designing and immediately going out into the open market to go shopping, essentially, and then building. So, how much of that sort of approach do you do now? I mean, maybe it's time constrained or space constrained with what's available, but is there? I know Marion, we've talked to Marion on the podcast as well, and she seems to approach her set design with this idea of design it and see what you have and build from that, and then um, see what you might need to buy. So how does that work for you?
Okay, well, again, I take my lead from the designers,
Mm-hmm.
and Marion is amazing with that. And
Mm-hmm.
she always has been. Long before I think even thinking of the environment, she was just always well, she came up through that CBC system,
Yeah.
Oh,
right?
okay.
In
Yeah.
her early days. So she was used to, I think, part of it was she was used to going down to the warehouse and picking and choosing.
Yeah.
So
And vintage
when,
store shopping, right? And
And she
yes,
talked about
exactly.
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and she's always had that in her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's ideal in that sense. And I would argue that some designers may not want to think like that. So I would say you just design what you want, and then maybe I do the thinking of what can I use and what can I reuse, and then run it by them,
Right.
right? Because some
Mm-hmm.
designers don't want to be limited, say, by a format, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Um, and so I think it's if they're not, and it's helpful if you have someone like Marion who thinks of that right off the bat, but it can still be done even if the designer is not thinking like he or she is not thinking like that, and they're just want to go big. We can still pick and choose if we can if we have stuff available, right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Mm-hmm.
reuse.
Mm-hmm.
Joe,
Mm-hmm.
how prevalent do you think this type of mindset is, though, in the industry? Are you an outlier, or is this starting to happen more and more around, at least your world, but also down in other key markets around the US or even Europe?
Well, I think in certainly in our market, it's starting to happen more and more. I believe and I think if we had something more formal, so where how it's working right now and is we will now call each other, hey, I've got a show ending. I've got this, and this. Can you use all that stuff? And I like so we as we're ending, we'll try and phone around to other productions. I think most coordinators are doing that now, right? So at least we've got that going. If there's something more formal, like a little Facebook page or a thing that people could check in, like if we had a storage unit and that people who could say, oh, I can get this many flats, I can get this many doors,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. And Wiseacre, Peter Muskimin, who Zena and I are working with, they have a lot of iconic pieces as well. They'll save elevator pieces, they'll save certain windows and doors,
Hmm.
um, and so you can check in there. So that was for me, that one of the first things I would do is try and figure out if there's other shows coming down and talk to them, see what they've got. Like when I start a new show, I will call around and just see what I can get
Hmm.
first, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. And I know you've done some cost analysis around this. I feel like the two big elephants, if you will, in the room are cost and time, right? I feel
And storage,
storage space. Okay, three. Those are
which
the
is
which
kind
I
of
get,
cost too.
which I guess cost. I was just going
yeah,
to say, you're right. That does come down to cost. Yeah.
yeah. So how have you been budgeting, first of all, and kind of what are you seeing in terms of savings? And how do you start to navigate these kind of big the hurdles of budget and time and storage? Like what does that look like for you?
I I haven't I haven't presented a business case yet in terms of if you give me this much storage space, I can save you this much money. Because it's hard because some stuff will sit there for a while and then other stuff it's hard to I know my instincts tell me I'm saving you money. Um, I I think I just told you, on Glamorous, we didn't have a lot of storage space and we are always getting yelled at for, because you can't get into the fire aisles around the studio. And so we're always like, get that stuff out of here. So they Marianne Waterhouse finally gave me two containers, two 40-foot, like those metal containers, 40 footers, which are a good size, right? And that I know that saved them way more than it cost for them to rent those for me, like way more. We were able to save sets and save iconic set pieces and reuse lighting pieces. Like when I say lighting, lights that we built, like light boxes and with milk plexi and stuff that we did, and reuse those. And but I didn't get around. I didn't do a dollars and cents factor on that. But that's my goal to do. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, And then I feel like I heard there was a story once you told about trying to reuse materials or send materials even to the States to warehouse because you thought that that would save money or save in materials going to landfill. Um,
Yeah.
how did that
So,
work?
well, it worked out very well. So it was so when Glamorous, it was a show called Glamorous. When it ended, uh, in the off season, they weren't sure if it was coming back, so he left a good portion of it standing. This whole sort of corporate office of this makeup company, and in the meantime, Matlock, a series that's going down in LA, but they shot the pilot up here. And they used that fairly extensively. They changed some things to look, but they used that for their pilot. And I have to say, a nod to Frank Syracuse and John Weber, who run, executive producers. They're very good at reusing stuff like that. They really have, especially Frank. He's got an eye for that, and he can say, "Well, why don't we just come over here? I got a weird room here at Star Trek that could work, or something." You know what I mean? Like he's very good at that. So um, they shot. Their pilot using that as their corporate headquarters, as their law firm. And so then, of course, the strike happened. And when we were asked, and then they figured out Glamorous wasn't coming back. So when I was asked to take down the Glamorous sets, there was no shows going. I couldn't pass that on to anybody. And there was a lot, and then it suddenly struck me, well, they used it for the pilot for Matlock, and it's been greenlit. So I got a hold of Adam, the designer, Adam Rowe, and he's one of these designers that is into this, and he will reuse anyways to begin with. He will design with this in mind to begin with, right? About trying to reuse and reshuffle to have different looks. So I got a hold of him, and he was very happy about this. So by literally packing well, we got it down to 2 truckloads, and I minimum I saved them 300 grand
Mhm.
minimum because a lot of the glass and all that. I know my glass bill for that first build on was almost $500,000, so just
On
all that
glass
glass,
alone?
glass and aluminum, those type of windows, because
Oh, okay.
it was a huge, it was quite an extensive office.
Yeah.
And so just that alone, even adding a reuse factor to it, it was like, yeah, we saved them well over 300 grand.
Yeah. So these trucks went from Toronto to LA,
Yes.
and then that material was stored and then reused.
Yeah. And they sent pictures, and we even got a. So here's the thing. In We came into some roadblocks because I think they might have thought the producers, Adam, the designer, knew the value of this stuff, but I don't think the producers were sold on it. I think they thought we're trying to get rid of a bunch of garbage and
Mhm.
flats they don't need. So they put up a bunch of roadblocks. They said, "Well, we don't have anywhere to store this stuff." I mean, we're talking LA during the strike. Like you could have probably stored it like anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but they said, "No, we don't have anywhere to store it." So our production manager, um, Kieran Singh, he was behind us, and he was like a pit bull on this. So he got around that hurdle and said, "Okay, well, we'll leave it in trucks here. We'll split it and we'll leave it in trucks, and we'll just leave it at the CBS lot until you're ready for it." So we got around that. And then we found out that you need special trucks to enter California. So you can drive something all the way from Toronto right through the States with one truck, but then you need a certain type of dual axle or something. I can't remember what it was, a certain truck to drive in the state of California. So then we had to unload those
Mm.
trucks onto other trucks, but it still was still very economical for them. Anyway, our production manager Kieran just kept getting rid of these hurdles.
Persistence.
Yes.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And we ended up getting a letter from the producer saying it was amazing and how wonderful and how good it came shipped down. Like there's no broken glass. We shipped it down very well. Everything was done. And Adam kept sending me pictures of them putting it back up. And even I'll tell you, thinking out of the box, it was a huge cantilevered metal staircase, 2-story metal staircase, and we were able to cut that in ways that it could just be re-welded together very easily. So a lot of people would have looked at that staircase and said, "Oh, you can't move that." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But we did. We cut that in a way
Yeah.
that it was able to break down and go back together easily and saved them, a lot of money and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of time, you know?
Uh,
And he
I
kept,
just
yeah,
yeah, I just love how innovative you have to be as a builder, welder, metal fabricator on a set, right? I mean, you literally someone can come to you one day and be like, "I need this," and you're like, "All right, we're gonna ramp a
yeah,
car off of something into this building, and this is gonna happen." And you're like,
yeah.
"Okay, well, I don't have a blueprint for that, but well, let's make it happen."
Well, see, Mark, and that's why this is so frustrating that we can't get this going because we are in the industry of saying yes.
Yeah,
Like exactly what you're saying, Mark. You've got, let's say you got one set coming, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, the director comes in and says,
yeah,
"Oh, no, no, we're not going to shoot that today. I'm going to shoot a car going through that door. I need a
yeah,
breakaway door." We don't say no. We say, "Okay, what time are you going to do it? Are you seeing it
yeah,
both? Are you going to see it both sides? Are you going to see?" We all got 101 questions, but we do it, right?
yeah.
And that's why I can't figure out we if we all just put our minds together like this, in terms of this reusing and redoing,
It's
we'd
such a
have it
creative.
we'd have it
It's
solved by breakfast.
Yeah, and this
Oh,
is the thing, right? It's like there is no industry that's more creative,
Yeah,
more
I
innovative,
know.
and
Yeah,
can make anything happen in the craziest moments.
yeah.
I think that's
mm-hmm.
what inspires us all the time here, right? And it's just speaking to folks like yourself too. Speaking of crazy things, though, what's the wildest thing you've had to build, or what's the like what's the most memorable, or I'm sure that there's some moments that you're just like, wow, this is by far the craziest thing I've ever done.
God, that's a good question. I'll tell you the one that's I'm excited about it is in this series uh, that I've got pilot that I've got coming up is I have to do an old medieval catapult, something that
Oh
shoots
yeah.
and shoots through and goes through a window, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Not
Yeah.
often you get a chance to build an old medieval catapult,
Yeah.
you know.
How do you do the research for that?
Well, our art department has got photos already, and
Got
they've
it.
got some photos ready, and then we'll just figure it out, and yeah, so it'll be a combination of us and special effects. I think the craziest thing I think we ever done. I worked on a show about 9/11, and we uh, we went into the herd. So part of the story was, do you remember when before 9/11 when they actually blew up part of the parking garage underneath there? They sent a van in, they blew up
Hmm.
part of the parking underground parking, and we went into the Hearn, the old station here, right? The old electrical power station, and it was huge. And we had cars dangling, so we had to make it look post-explosion.
Right.
And we had pieces of, well, it was styrofoam for us, but pieces of concrete on rebar hanging down from the ceiling and a van teetering just on the edge. And it was pretty crazy when you went in there. It really looked post-explosion. And we were working like 80 feet in the air on lifts trying to, you know, make it look like broken concrete and that. So that's probably one of the craziest, you know?
Wow.
Awesome. One follow up to that though is we talk to folks around here like virtual production now and obviously CGI and you've got the green screens and all these things like that, the LED screens now. What what percentage of the business do you think is kind of going away from more of these sort of like wild sets like the one you just mentioned to a bit more of a yeah virtual kind of production?
Yeah. I don't know if I could put a percentage on it, but here's the way I see it right now, and I'm sure it'll get better, but it's still very expensive to do ground row stuff, because the actors are going in front of the screen and it's just very expensive in post to do that. So we tend to do uh, what the actors are touching and walking in front of,
Yeah.
and then the CGI can come in and enhance, right? So I think there always will be that need for us. Over my day, I have worked on different films about JFK, and I've actually literally built Hyannisport, their complex, and I've built the whole front part of Hyannisport twice in my time. And the difference between the first time was the first time we built it, the whole height, the whole everything. The second time is we just built the lower level because there's a nice long porch and an awning, a porch and a ceiling on it. We just built that whole first part, and the second part was all CGI, and it looked just as good and
Yeah.
looked amazing. But we still worked in the area that the actors were involved in. And I think that's just getting more and more refined. So I think we'll still so I think, yeah, percentage wise, we're probably going to lose a lot of that big stuff, I think,
Hmm.
you know?
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, Joe. Like, because you've seen the sort of evolution of the industry and, worked with a lot of different folks, and probably heard a lot of different reasons why things can or can't happen. Like these roadblocks you mentioned, getting material down to LA. I'm just curious, like when you hear folks out there, saying like, "Oh, we can't move this staircase," or like what do you think? Like, are you like, "Oh, no, no, like we totally can," or is this like I'm just curious, like what's your reaction when you hear kind of these maybe excuses or initial reactions to like how to do things?
Well, um, there are some people who still feel that they don't want to reuse it because it's going to take jobs away from people.
Mm-hmm.
They think, oh no, you're taking union jobs away because I'm getting scenery. I would argue first off, that that doesn't happen. Like if, they'll always find money they'll find better ways to spend that money, in fact. And in fact, we end up being more creative or doing, they may be able to take something further than they could because they didn't think they had the money for it to begin with. So
Hmm.
I don't think it's going to take jobs away. So that may be one reason why people are saying, no, it can't be done.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, if I hear someone say that, I would just encourage them and say, well, look, why don't we at least let's look at it. Let's take a walk and let's look at it and see if we were able to do this, how, like do the math, so to speak. Let's
Yeah.
figure out how we could cut this down and do it. So I at least would encourage that.
Hmm.
I'm pretty good at uh, encouraging and just working with people, right? That's in
Yeah.
that sense. So, you know, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you've been quite an advocate, if you will, for reuse. Now that you've had these, really cool success stories and whatnot, you've been talking about it on panels and, even now here with us and that sort of thing. And I really appreciate you kind of speaking up because we don't hear a lot of construction coordinators and construction managers out there talking about this. And so I always really appreciate your perspective. So,
well, it's something that's always, I don't know, it's been a part of me. Even in my early days when I was doing a lot of stuff. Uh, so, is it called, it's now called Ready, Set, Grant Hagee, Ready, Set, Recycle.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So when Grant first started out, it was just called Set Reset. And it
Mm,
was at the Loblaws building at uh, Lakeshore and Bathurst, where they now have a flagship store. Loblaws has a flagship store. So that was all just abandoned for many, many years. And Galen Weston at the time, he gave Grant a really good price on that. He just wanted it was just to his advantage. So we found out later that that was a soft spot with him because that's where the family business started. It was down at that Bathurst there, right? And so all his advisors and everything would say, "Oh, you got to do condos. This space is ideal. We're talking Lakeshore and Bathurst here. This is classic." And Galen kept fighting it and kept saying, leave it with me," right? And he'd look at all these proposals, but in the meantime, he rented out to Grant for a song. Like it was very reasonable price. And so Grant had all these flats and all these, and he had also had space. I realized one day that we could actually set a shop right there. So I used to do shows right out of Set Reset and
oh,
and literally would just pull flats as I needed them from Grant, just like in those old CBC days. We would just pull flats, pull windows, pull doors. We could put a set together for next to nothing, and then we'd return it to Grant. Like
hmm.
we'd rent it and return it. And we did that for a good number of years. And then unfortunately he had to vacate uh, that premise. And he just, again, I know Grant looked at trying to cost wise, it just wasn't making sense to
Hmm.
have, by the time he paid real estate to
Yeah,
redo that business because Galen Weston was giving him a good price.
right, right. Yeah, but that's interesting because these kinds of things have happened in the past and we kind of got away from it. This is kind of going
Yeah,
back to
yeah,
earlier in our
that's right.
conversation where
Yeah, I
we
know.
kind of got away from it. Do you think it's because, like, I'm just trying to put my finger on it. Is it that budgets got so big and people just started thinking like, okay, well, if we've got, this big budget, we're just going to buy new and make sure it matches the look? Or like, how do you think we got away from it?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be a combination of that, but it also could be a combination. There's so many players in the game now. Like before the main studios, maybe it was worth their while holding on to stuff because they knew they'd be back or something. But now there's so many different projects and so many, I don't know, there's so many different players and streamers and everything that
Hmm.
Mhm.
maybe they don't want that overhead at all. I'm not sure.
Hmm. Hmm. But if we've done it before, we can do it again.
Yeah, and just talking to you just now, it just struck me. We need to find another Galen Weston that just has this, has a good heart, and because that was all it was. He wanted to hold on to that building, and now I mean it was wise of him to hold on to it because now it's one of the flagship stores right down there, right? It's a huge flagship store. But that's what we need to do is find another
Mhm.
person that just wants to hold on to a building right now, and they'd like a tenant just to keep it going, you know?
In every
Yeah.
city, in every major
Yeah,
filming location.
Every
exactly.
major city. Yeah. This is also, just to think through, and I know things take a little bit of time with government, but like this is that, public-private partnership kind of scenario where a municipality may have a facility, and this can happen, in any city, right? Where an industry can come in especially film and TV if we're shooting, it's a hub city and do this kind of stuff out of a facility. So, mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm. And you got a lot of construction folks waiting, designers, who could jump on this, no problem.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's a workforce to engage for sure, for sure. Um, well, curious, we ask all our guests a question,
Okay.
and we've been learning a lot over the course of this podcast from folks and their answers on this. But if you were to create a new playbook and guiding principles about sustainability and entertainment, what would be first on your list, or first couple of points on your list?
To get back to that system of reusing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's just to me, it's a key thing, and I just don't know how we got away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would be, I mean, that would be number one. I mean, because that, and not just in construction. I'm talking costume. I'm talking, and
Mm-hmm.
so the studios are very good at protecting or saving set pieces. In fact, sometimes they go too far. They carry around pieces of set pieces that no one's ever going to use, but they'll store it because they consider it inventory. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're very good at that. They just need and I think costumes is pretty good at. There's a couple of companies that will buy that come in, take all the costumes for a set fee, and then rent out. So there's really good rental houses, with costumes. So we
Mm-hmm.
just need to get better at that part at construction, you
Right.
know.
So it's almost like you need a better database or a way that folks know that they can just somehow search somewhere and know that that's their first step. Okay, I need something that fits this description, this, that, and then it's like it's easily cataloged.
Yeah,
Um,
that's it, Mark. I agree. And I think if I may say, it's a small thing, but the dimensions need to be accurate. Because if I
right.
look at something
Yeah.
and I can say, okay, it's 4 foot 5 3/8 by this, then I can start to build. I'll say I'll take it, and I don't need to go there and measure it. See, I think what deters a lot of people is, oh, I got to send someone out there to measure it because you know what I mean. And that, but if
Yeah.
if on that database, if it's accurate measurements, and I'll call it carpenter measurements, not
Yeah.
not art department measurements.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone that just knows that you're going to be building around this, right?
Uh-huh.
And you take those dimensions, and that mark then it becomes so easy. You can say, I'm going to take that, and now because you know the size, you can start building walls around it. You're not held up and waiting to go get that piece, measure
Mm-hmm.
it before you can figure out how to fit it in. And those are just the little steps that we need to
Yeah.
make just to make that easier. So I think, yeah, the playbook would be just figuring out a way
Yeah.
to make it
System.
easier,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, there
and
you
and
go.
I,
Opportunities.
and rather than imposing all that storage space, because it seems to be obvious that studios don't want that extra space for storage. So that's where our neutral space comes in, Zena, right?
Hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
anybody can come and get it. And as Mark said, we can have it online, have a
Yeah.
catalog,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we have
Yep.
an opportunity there for someone who's listening in here.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, this is in progress. This is in
Okay.
progress. I mean,
yeah,
minus a space, we've got existing businesses that are
Hmm.
already,
Hmm.
taking materials, various materials. We've got
Kelsey.
Yeah, in Vancouver, there's Keep It Green Recycling, and they've got a reuse center, which needs more material. So please bring your sets there. Shout out. And then in Toronto, we've got a whole group of folks, Joe's part of it, who's trying to figure this out. I mean,
Yeah.
this is totally grassroots, and we have been coming together monthly, sometimes multiple times a month for like a year, probably longer to really hone in on what's needed, how it could work, what the options are, talk to the city, talk to other organizations. It's been an effort and we're getting close. We're getting real close. So I don't know. This podcast will probably air in a couple weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks from where we are right now. So, look around. You might have already seen it been announced
That's
because
right.
we're getting really
Okay. All
close
right.
to bringing these existing organizations together in this massive like collaboration effort. And I'm really, you know, I really
Yeah.
thank Joe for his input on what's needed and, everybody who's working in that group, what's needed around this because, folks aren't waiting anymore. That's what the fun
Yeah.
part is about all
Just
of
gonna make it
this.
happen.
They're just making it happen. They're like, okay, talk about roadblocks, right, Joe? Like, okay, this organization won't help in whatever way, so we'll just figure it out ourselves. And, you
Yeah,
know,
that's right. Yeah.
so people are just volunteering their time and whatnot. And this is like, yeah, it could be a total business opportunity if somebody wanted to fund it, but we don't have that right now. And
Hmm.
so this is all volunteer based and trying to make something happen. And we're close. We're really
Yeah.
close.
Well, thank you
So
both for doing that.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, my little
Well,
contribution to this episode.
Right.
well, not so little. Shout out to Zena. She's the one that's been holding us together and
Uh,
sending the meetings and just guiding us forward. So thank you, Zena.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well done.
you're welcome. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for this great
Well,
conversation today. And hopefully our listeners also, pick up whatever whatever inspires them as well to go out there and make real change happen. It starts at the grassroots level all the way up to the executive level, right? So
yeah.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you both.
I just, I just love that guy.
yeah, he's just
I
so
just,
soft-spoken and thoughtful. And I mean, he's been at it for a long time too. So it's just like, but you know what I love? It's like he still has that spark.
I
He
know.
still has it. And I'm like,
I know.
yeah,
He's like, I'm really good at talking to people and just, asking questions and like, yeah, we can maybe measure this thing. And what I was just like, way to go, Joe. Way to get out there and like,
yeah, yeah. And it just what I love about it, it's just so common sense. I mean, that's like,
yeah.
there's no mystery here. It's like, yeah, just reuse these things where you can and dress them up differently and change the upholstery or do whatever you need to do, but you know
Hmm.
and this I have to assume this is being done to a lesser extent in some of the other key film markets, or is this really that groundbreaking right now that's happening in Toronto, Vancouver?
No, I mean, it's happening all over the place. It's just that we don't hear these stories from
Right.
the construction coordinators or whoever. I just happen to know Joe and, have been working with him for years. So I know what he does. I know how he works with folks like Marion, production
Mm,
designers and these sorts of things. So, like, I think these kinds of stories inspire other folks. I mean, this is just, yeah, one of the reasons for this podcast is to just bring forth these voices because we don't hear from construction coordinators out there. We're just not hearing the
right.
stories,
Right.
right? So it's
Yeah.
happening. It's just that we don't hear it. So
Yeah. Well, this is great. I mean, he's a great ambassador and spokesperson for this, and hopefully other construction coordinators out there are listening. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you as well. Any feedback or comments? Yeah, please let us know. And obviously, like and subscribe and share.
share,
We're in
share.
season 2 now, well into it, and yeah, looking forward to having more conversations.
Get in touch. Do get in touch. And like I'll just double click on that share piece, because if we don't share it around and get this into the hands of folks out there in the industry, like then we will never be able to, get these stories out there to inspire people. So please help us share it around, and yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see you.
Thanks for listening.
Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.